The next thing we need to do is prepare the cuff. So I have one here that's already mostly prepared. So here is the cuff piece, and it already has the fusible interfacing applied to the part of the cuff that is going to go on the inside of the garment. That's going to wrap around the person's arm. So how do I know that? When I made the pattern, just because this is my personal preference, I notched my pattern so that the part that goes on the inside where I need to do the stitch in the ditch is just a little bit longer. So the longer side is the part that's going to go on the inside near the person's wrist. I made a separate fusible interfacing piece, and I made it a little bit smaller so that the interfacing didn't hang off the edges of the cuff. And I also didn't go all the way to the edge on the side that I'm going to stitch in the ditch. And then I did let the interfacing go just a little bit past the fold, just to make a nice crisp fold when I do press it. So I have my iron heating up over here, and I have another cuff, and I have cut another piece of fusible interfacing to go on this cuff. I don't know if you can see, but mine is super shiny on the glue side. So I have the glue side down. I checked my center notches and folded this so I know that this is the longer of the two sides, the way I made my pattern, so that this will be my stitch in the ditch side. And then I've placed my interfacing so that it's not hanging off of my cuff, because I don't want to get glue on my iron or on my ironing board, which this beautiful ironing board I recovered. So I made this ironing board cover with some fabric that features vintage fashion, like vintage patterns. One of my former students, who was also a TA, Faith Kawakami, she bought me a yard of this fabric, and I couldn't figure out what to do with it. And finally I decided I will cover my ironing board, and that way I get to look at it all the time. But I don't want to get interfacing glue on it. So I make sure that my interfacing is well placed. I also don't want the melt onto my iron, because sometimes that happens. So I'm going to put a press cloth over the thing that I'm fusing. And then this particular fusible interfacing seems to work best with steam. So what I like to do is just spray my press cloth and get it damp. And then I put the iron on the press cloth and just let it like sizzle and evaporate the water that I have on the press cloth. And that seems to fuse this particular kind of interfacing really well. It doesn't work on all of them, so you're going to hear the sizzle as I put this down. And this one likes to sit for like 10, 15, 20 seconds, depending on how hot the iron is. So I let it sit there for a little while until all of the steam is dried up. And then I kind of wiggle it. Well, it looks like it could use a few more seconds. So I'll let that sit for a few seconds. By the way, this is a cordless iron. When I flip it around, you'll see it has no cord. I absolutely love it. It's amazing. I'm always tripping over the cord. So now I'm just moving this to the other side. Let that sit for, I don't know, 15, 20 seconds. And then I'll do the middle, because you can see they the ends of the iron taper, so I'm not getting the middle very well. So I'll let that sit for a few seconds, and while that's happening, I'll just check and make sure. It looks like I need a little more time right here. This didn't actually fuse yet. So once I have this, I'll go ahead and start pinning it back onto my cuff. Oh no, I lied. I'm going to press up the side that's going to be stitch in the ditch. There we go. Now that's, nope, still needs a little bit more. So as I said, this is going to be the side that I'm going to stitch in the ditch. I have a little bit more than 1/2 inch seam allowance. So I'm going to fold up the 1/2 inch seam allowance. I'm going to press it that way. Then I'm going to fold it back like this. And here I should have the distance between this fold right here and this edge right here should be about 3/8. Okay, just checking that. Okay, good. Everybody's fused. Great. So the distance between here and here should be about 3/8. And I'm going to sew this seam with 1/2 inch seam allowance until I'm about 1/2 inch from this edge to facilitate me sewing my my sleeve to this piece here. So fold my stitch in the ditch in. Let me grab a ruler to make sure that I'm being accurate. I usually don't draw on things like when I'm doing, you know, just sewing by myself, but I feel like on camera it's really helpful for people to be able to see. So I'll use this, it's a friction marker. So once I iron it, it'll just, these are Friction by Pilot. Let's see if I can, no, the glare is too terrible. I don't think you're gonna be able to see it. So, okay. So now we know where to fold it. And I'll just double check on this side. I have to be careful not to singe my fusible interfacing. I don't know if you've ever done that. You're paying attention to ironing like one part of something, and meanwhile your fusible interfacing is melting. So you just have to be careful not to do that. And then often what I do while I'm ironing one thing, so I have to iron the other cuff. While I'm ironing the other cuff, I'll sometimes let this one that I just ironed sit somewhere with something heavy on it. So I have like pattern weights. So I can just put a pattern weight on the thing that I just ironed. And that just helps set the crease. All right. So now I'm going to fold this in half and meet you over at the sewing machine.